his agencies, which he is supposed to take full responsibility for, are failing the people of Illinois. They are allowing the most vulnerable to be abused and neglected over and over again.
That is State Representative Bradley Fritz from the House yesterday. He joined others, Republicans, blasting the governor for continued problems with the Department of Children and Family Services, with the Department of Human Services, and reports that come out showing a delay in reporting information about child deaths with DCFS oversight. And then you've also got issues with facilities across the state that you regularly see individuals with developmental disabilities being abused. I mean, there's been reports and stories of cover-ups and investigations and inspector general reports, and it's covering the State House. It can get
to date.
It can get kind of it can get kind of gut wrenching. All right, there's no question. When you read these audits and you're seeing just specific cases spelled out of a young child who had abusive parents, and DCFS is called to come in and investigate, and they go to the house and they see it's a wreck, and they see that it's just not the proper living conditions for a child. And then DCFS kind of, files a report, and not much is done. That child is considered, on the radar of DCFS. But then it comes out that the child was essentially murdered or died of neglect at that house. And DCFS then has to follow up on that. And these types of things, we see reports of this time and time again. Where red flags may be raised, or there's just not much focus on something that if there was some intervention, there could be a life saved. And these reports come out quite a bit, and we regularly, every year, it seems like every 6 months, we have legislators raising this issue. Yesterday, they did that yesterday with 4 Republicans from the Illinois House. Here is State Representative Jeff Kiker. He said that Democrats are far too often focused on, say, banning plastic bags, or legalizing or decriminalizing prostitution, or something to the effect of spending more tax dollars, or going after the Trump administration. He says Democrats seem more worried about that than focusing on cleaning up the issues with DCFS, cleaning up the issues with the Department of Human Services that run these centers for those with developmental disabilities, where you hear about patient abuse and such. And the numbers are pretty staggering. So here's Jeff Kiker talking about how it's not just Democrats that are culpable for the problems that DCFS is the majority party in the legislature. It's also the governor who's culpable for the failures with these departments, he says.
To date, these problems continue to get worse, and each one of us in our district office hears from parents and family members of folks that are confined to these facilities, and what do they hear from the administration? Zero. When is the last time you heard the governor say, we've got a disaster in DCFS, we're going to step up and fix it, and no child is going to be harmed going forward? When is the last time the governor has visited a SILA to see what the conditions that these people live in? It doesn't occur. He doesn't put attention on the most vulnerable members of our society, and that's regardless of what's happening in D.C. Every Democrat upstairs would rather have you asking the question of, what about funding from D.C.? What about... They continue to mismanage the agencies that we have in this state, and it's evidenced by the fact that our budget, when I got here in 2018, was $39 billion. Today, we're considering a budget for $54 billion, a $15 billion increase per year over a very quick 6-year cycle.
So again, Kiker talking about how Democrats seem to be more focused on blasting the Trump administration for whatever problems there may be, trade, tariffs, stock market, threats of funding being withheld from schools that do DEI, or that, jurisdictions that have sanctuary policies, which we'll talk about coming up. But he says they're not focusing on the real substantive issues of vulnerable people being impacted. Well, yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker had a moment signing a trade or a memorandum of understanding with the UK, but it gave me the opportunity to ask him for a response to what the Republicans had to say. And I said, listen, Governor, what are you doing at DCFS? Hundreds of underreported child deaths, thousands of cases of abuse. You've had 6 years now, and it's still a problem. Where is the focus? Here's what I had to say to my question yesterday in response.
There are no underreported deaths. Okay, we have an annual report that comes out. It is done by the independent, the IG, right, every year, and you can read about all of those situations. I read that entire report, and and DCFS and I react to that every single year by making changes and adjusting to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And indeed, that is working. So I feel confident that, the allegation that was made by a reporter who doesn't understand the way the system of reporting works in the state of Illinois is just, it was a false, road that he went down. I think he couldn't stop himself by the time he'd written half of it and started learning that he was wrong. Didn't want to pull back on the report.
So again, the governor is saying that he's doing things about all of this, and it's working, but he kind of slams reporting on all of this. But listen, I mean, when you get to these audit reports and you read what the auditors are finding, they're essentially saying that the agencies are failing to produce incident reports for 1,200 child deaths. Like they don't have all the information, or they're failing to, report properly, or something to that effect. And there's also 3,000 serious injuries that go reported. So a lot of different ways of reporting this and cutting it and slicing it. Either way, the concern remains that the governor, according to Republicans, is too busy traveling the nation, spending on politics in places outside Illinois, getting on cable TV, and I got the governor's reaction to that. But first, here's State Representative Bradley Fritz saying that it's time for the governor to get to work in Illinois.
It is long past time for Governor Pritzker to get off his jet, roll up his sleeves, and get to work here in Illinois instead of campaigning in swing states, funding Supreme Court races in Wisconsin, or chasing after CNN and MSNBC for a crumb of national political attention. His agencies, which he is supposed to take full responsibility for, are failing the people of Illinois. They are allowing the most vulnerable to be abused and neglected over and over again. So
some of the reports out of these state agencies that care for those with developmental disabilities, everything from people being punched to not having proper sanitation and such. I mean, this sometimes you hear these stories and kind of reflect of what was uncovered by the likes of Geraldo Rivera decades ago, going to mental institutions where, it was just something out of a horror movie. But Republicans, Democrats alike, they have raised concerns, and surely the Pritzker administration doing some things about it, as he said, but is it enough? And why isn't there more focus on this? Again, to Bradley Fritz's point, the governor needs to stop flying around the country, getting on cable news to get what he calls a crumb of national political attention, and focus on Illinois. Here's how the governor responded to my question about, what's your response?
That is absolutely insane. Can I just say that when I talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C., it is about protecting Illinois. The President of the United States, actually the Congress, is proposing taking away health care from potentially 1 million people in the state of Illinois. So when I stand up and rail against that, and when I stand up and explain to folks out there that we need to fight to make sure that we're not, that we're not going to be subject to taking away health care from 1 million people, that's because I am deeply concerned about the people of the state of Illinois. I don't think in this circumstance can anybody who holds state office can, not talk about what's going on at the federal level and the impact that it will have on state government and our budget.
So the governor saying, hey, he's getting on the national spotlight to try to secure as much federal tax dollars for the state of Illinois so it doesn't harm the budget. We'll watch what happens. I don't know. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. But don't forget, wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with The Center Square on YouTube.